Welcome to this week's Magic Wand Moment. I'm Lindsey Wahlstrom, Chief Mamatologist here at Rona's Fun Lab. Today, I'm joined by Kelly Sitler, a child life specialist, a childhood cancer survivor, and one of our advisors here at Rona's Fun Lab. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you.
Likewise, you bring such a unique perspective to the space, and we're going to cover all of those different viewpoints over the course of the discussion today, both having been a child in care, but then also now supporting families and cares. Before we get started, I'm wondering if you want to introduce yourself a bit and tell a little bit about your story.
Right when I was 16, I was diagnosed with acute promyeloid cytic leukemia. They call it APML, and it's a very rare leukemia. I felt very swollen lymph nodes. I had a lot of bruising on my body and just didn't feel right. I felt very tired and exhausted. So I actually went to my primary care doctor, and it was as simple as a finger prick. And at first, they called and they said that my labs looked off, and that they thought that I was anemic. And then the next day they called and they said, something's really not right about this. We really recommend that you go down to Maria Ferry Children's Hospital in Valhalla, New York. And I remember saying to my mom, it was a weekend. I had school the next day. And I was like, Mom, no, let's just go to Vassar. It's not a big deal. It's fine. And she really said, the doctor specifically said Maria Ferry. And at the time we didn't know why. But I knew it wasn't good when we showed up there, and they were waiting for me. They knew that I was coming. They knew my name. And immediately, we went right into the ED, which, normally you don't get right in there unless it's pretty critical. So, and they drew, so much blood. That part is all kind of a blur. It's funny. Sometimes I say that I don't know if my brain just blocks out that part and blocks out some of the trauma from that experience, or maybe the chemo washed it all away. I don't know, but they took a lot of blood, and pretty crazy. By midnight that night, they had actually told my parents that they suspected that it was a form of leukemia and that they would need a bone marrow biopsy to confirm. I have 3 sisters. I have 2 younger sisters and an older sister. And, they were there in the morning, and I went off for a bone marrow biopsy. And it was actually at that time that they confirmed it. They knew that it was leukemia, but that they were going to be sending the blood specifically to a specialty lab in, I think they said it was Seattle, and that they would really be able to determine exactly what sort of form of leukemia it was. At that time, they thought that it was AML, acute myeloid leukemia. And so I immediately got a bone marrow biopsy and then a spinal tap, and they injected the spine with chemo. And I started my journey from there. The team there, I get teary-eyed talking about it because they are wonderful. I started some pretty intense chemotherapy right away. And after, I think, about a few weeks, clinical trials were thrown out there and things like that. But then they determined that Seattle had come back with the labs. I'll never forget it. The doctor had came in and said, I actually have some incredible news. He said, the form of leukemia that we had thought Kelly had is pretty serious. And this new one, the one that she actually does have, APML, he said that there has been some recent research studies and treatment that has been just transformative for that sort of leukemia. He said that it's a treatment that's from Asia. It's arsenic trioxide, which is a rat poisoning, and
Yeah.
the way he described it to us was that you could probably find it in your garage. But what the rat poisoning did for my leukemia cells was that it targeted my specific leukemia cells without targeting my healthy cells. And
Ah.
so, although I had already gone through some intense rounds of chemo, I did lose my hair and things like that. I was immunocompromised. From my treatment from then on out was going to be a mix of chemo and a mix of arsenic. Right away, we saw improvements. We saw the cells were decreasing, and I didn't need as much intense chemotherapy. And I think it was about 6 months later that they said that that I officially had no more cancer cells and I was deemed in remission, which I remember exactly where I was. My mom remembers. And we were actually in the outpatient center, in the infusion center, and we were in this corner room. It had these big windows, and the whole team was emotional. I just knew how much that they cared for me and felt this success just as much as we did.
Yeah.
And just really throughout that whole journey, whether I was inpatient or in the infusion center, I just felt so supported, and I knew that the team really cared for me, and that that they were going to advocate for me, and especially the child life specialist which is a huge reason why I found the career that I love so much and I'm so passionate about. She was just incredible. She advocated for me. She made sure that my voice was heard. As soon as I finished school, or as soon as I finished treatment, I actually started college for child life right away. And now I've been a certified child life specialist for about 4 years now, and I love it. I love it.
Well, let's talk about that. For people who maybe are less familiar, what does a child life specialist do?
Child life specialists, we really work in pediatric hospitals or pediatric medical facilities to provide therapeutic support for not only children, but their siblings and their family as well. And that's pretty broad. So we really do it in different ways. But some of the biggest things is that we really want to educate the child about their illness in a way that they understand. Like I said before, sometimes doctors and staff can use these big medical words that are so normal for them, but for children and for families, it's very difficult to understand, and you're trying to keep up
Yeah.
and you're getting so much thrown at you at one time. And so really a huge part of the child life specialist role is to just really focus on solely that child and really making sure that they're aware and that they understand, and that we say it in a developmentally appropriate language so that they can really comprehend it. In my current role, I use a lot of visuals, and I create these little models. And so I can really explain what is going on in their body, and what are we doing to try to help them with that, whether it's their treatment, whether it's infusions, whether it's a surgery. We're really there for that whole journey. And a huge part of the way we educate people on that is through play, through medical play and therapeutic play. What we try to do as child life specialists is really, despite of where these children are in their journeys, whether they're hospitalized outpatient or wherever they are, that that they can still be kids and that they can have fun and that we can really make it fun. These things they're not extras, they're not bonuses. This is essential. It's crucial for pediatric care. And so that's a huge part of what we do as child life specialists, and to really try to have these children leave with a positive experience, or really try to minimize some of that trauma and anxiety that they often do just experience. I love it. I feel like it was meant for me.
So when you think about your personal experience, how does it shape the way that you do your work?
It's a fine line because you never want to bring your biases and your personal experience. You don't want to bring that into the room. So I always say that I leave it at the door. But naturally, there are just ways that I'm constantly thinking internally in my head of what did this feel like for me? What helped
Yeah.
my mom in these situations? What are some things that people said that really were not helpful? And what were things that people said that really were? And to just really try to keep that in the back of my mind of all of that, of what was helpful, what was not. Really advocating for things that I know were maybe painful for me and that I can anticipate might be painful for them. You never want your biases to, you also don't want it to be about you. But so it's a fine line that I've definitely learned. And from the beginning, I actually had a mentor who told me very straight up, you have a beautiful, beautiful story. And it will be so monumental for you and your career and your patients, but leave it at the door, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it was important for me to hear, and because it's not about me. It's not about my journey. Everybody has their own, and it's not comparable, but it does allow me to have just an internal way of thinking where some other people may not. So, uh,
Yeah.
I think it is an important part of my story. I think it makes me a really great professional in that way, and just allows me to be more empathetic and compassionate and really understand what they similar journeys as to what they are going through.
Yeah. I often, when doing a lecture for a med school, I will say you need to notice what comes up when you hear Rona's story, and then you need to get therapy before you go in the room. Because once you're in the room, it's not about you, right? Like your
Yep.
personal experiences will help you, but it's not about you anymore.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that child is the star of that show and needs to
Yep.
continue to be that way. And I think sometimes we all do this, where we allow our personal experiences to taint the way that we interact with the world, or to influence how we say things or how we'd want things said to us, instead of really asking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we
Yeah,
naturally have some implicit biases, but it's important
totally. Yeah.
to self-reflect and to recognize those and think about really who's in front of us and that patient's in front of us and they have a different story and they have a different life and what can I do for them? And I'm just so grateful to be able to do it and be a part of their story.
Yeah. You said something, you pulled a thread that I want to go a little bit more in on, but so you were present this week for I did grand rounds at a hospital, and one of the new additions, if you will, for folks who have heard the previous version of the Fun Lab speech is that this concept of therapeutic play, music and arts therapy and palliative care are nice to haves. There is a ton of research that demonstrates they reduce trauma, they reduce anxiety, and they can really help to change outcomes and mental health
Hmm.
outcomes, but also physical health outcomes.
Yeah.
What do you how do you explain to people the role of what you do when someone says it's just play or like you're just playing or it isn't nice to have?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's actually something that we as child life specialists get a lot and it can be hard to hear, but really it just tells me that that person just needs some further education and
Yeah.
I had a bunch of nursing students shadowing our team this weekend and I was really just educating them on the important role that we play. And luckily, I had a doctor there and a nurse there who was really able to also teach them and say, this is a crucial part. So having them say that to those nursing students, I think it really made them understand that we are respected and we are valued and we're an
Yeah.
important part of the healthcare team. I started in a new role where I was the inaugural child life specialist at, and I still am at the at a large outpatient pediatric facility, and I did a lot of in services, just really making sure that the team that I was going to be working with was going to know how essential these services are, and exactly what I can help do, and that really is to reduce the trauma that children
Yeah.
often experience. I'm very lucky that I currently work with a team that really, really values child life and is constantly, referring to me as the expert in child development and coping. And I'm very grateful for that because they really do. They're constantly putting in the appropriate, referrals and consults. So many times they'll say, like, I can't imagine doing these pediatric patients without you. And that sort of feedback means so much, but it also means a lot when they share that with their colleagues because
Yeah.
then they can see that it is more than just play. I currently work in an infusion center and then also a ambulatory surgery center. Um, and one of the huge things that I do in the ambulatory surgery center is prep kids for their upcoming surgeries. And we do things like we decorate their anesthesia mask with stickers and we bedazzle it. They get if they're young, they get a little car that they drive into the OR. I really advocate for putting their favorite TV show if they watch
Mhm.
TV, putting it on the screen above them so when they're falling asleep they're watching that. And I think just seeing how my colleagues have witnessed what that child was like when they came in versus what they're like during some of those hardest moments and how they're coping and how they're smiling and then at
Yeah.
the end, they get a little prize. I print a certificate of bravery if they're age appropriate. And I had one kid say, "When can I come back?" And I was like, "You said surgery, and you want to come back?" And I think having the staff hear those things and see that difference from when they came in to when they are leaving, it speaks for itself.
Well, so that actually pulls on to something that I wanted to chat a little bit about, which is what do you think happens to a child when they understand what's going to happen or what is happening to them?
You see it. You see it in their face. You see them understand it. And I was a child development major in college, and you see them processing and understanding it. And then when you do understand it, when we do explain, what's going on with your body. In the infusion center, we have a lot of kids with Crohn's disease, actually, and they get this infusion. I really try to explain you have this disease and it affects your belly. It makes your belly hurt. It makes you go to the bathroom a lot. It affects your belly. And we have this special medicine that we are trying to give you to really help your body so that you don't have, you're not going to the bathroom a lot. Your belly does feel better. And I have visuals where I can really explain it. I have a book that I love to use to really, really educate them on their disease. And then once I do that, I can educate them about the medicine and how we're going to help. And I think one of the most important parts is why do we have to do this?
Mhm.
Children always are when they need an IV or when they need surgery. of course it's not fun. And so when we really can teach them why we have to do this, we're doing this because we're trying to help your body feel better. We're doing this
Yeah.
because if it's a surgery, we're trying to fix a part of your body that's broken or not working as it should. And so when we really take the time to explain it in a way that they understand, they really, you see their brain twisting and you see them understand it, and it makes them more cooperative. It makes them cope better. It makes all the difference. And they ask great questions. And I had one kid the other day and he's like, "So that's why I get this medicine?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then when he has previously, hated getting the IV, he was more compliant that time. He understood. He used the vein finder and he was helping me find his best vein for the IV to go in. And it makes all the world of a difference. And then his mom actually told me that he left and now he's not so worried to come back because he knows that this is going to help him.
We did immune suppression therapy at home before we went in for transplant, and um, the medicine tasted like how marijuana smells. Like it was just like terrible. You have to give it to a 5-year-old twice a day, and she would taste it, right? And it's just
Yep.
awful. And she would just be like, "Well, why? Why do I have to
Mhm.
take this?" And I remember explaining it to her. It's like your immune system, which she understood at that point. It's like your immune system's on a sugar rush, and this
Yeah.
medicine helps it understand that it's okay to just, like, chill and watch a movie.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, okay," right?
I think that, it's that speaks so much that you took the time to really explain that so that she would understand. And it's something that we try to do for all. But and child life is also pretty there's not that many of us, I think there's only about 6,000 in the whole world. And so larger children's hospitals have larger teams, but smaller children's hospitals, they have very few. And so we really have to prioritize and go based on what the highest need is in that moment and where we're going. And it's not easy. I can speak for myself, but I know that most of us feel this way. Like, I wish I could get to every single one because they all deserve that. They all
Yeah.
need that. But it's just not possible. But we try.
You do what you can with what you got. Okay, so the name of the show is The Magic Wand Moment. The reason for that is I'm gonna hand you an imaginary magic wand right now, and you get to make any wish you want with that wand, that would change the way we deliver pediatric care, and that can be for kids, for families, for providers. What would your wish be and why?
That's a great question. Like I said, there's about 6,000 child life specialists out there. But there's so many that are seeking jobs. And, child life specialists, because we are not, technically essential for that child to survive. Sometimes healthcare organizations do not think that we're essential to have a position, to have a role. And so a lot of times, child life specialists' roles and salaries are actually paid by nonprofit organizations who give grants for them for those
Yeah.
positions. I do think in the future that I think every day that these healthcare organizations are really noticing that we're essential for not only pediatric care and for the patient experience and for the whole thing, but that children cope better when we are there. They are happier when we are there. And I did see that I think it was New Jersey, that New Jersey is trying to make it so that if you're at children's hospital, you have to have a child life specialist. And I love that. I wish that for every single state because like we said earlier, it shouldn't be optional. It should be mandatory.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really
Of course.
grateful for sharing your perspective and your story, but then also for the work that you're doing with us.
If anybody ever wants to ask questions, what is, a day in the life of a child life specialist, I love talking about it and promoting it because it's such an important field. So thank you for listening to me and listening to the important role that we play and my own personal journey and just thank you for being you.